In this training video, I am going to show you how to actually get good at sales. And this works whether you sell coaching, consulting, professional services, or even tangible products. Basically, anywhere that you have to get another human being to say yes to you. Sales isn't a gift that you're born with. I wasn't born with it. You probably weren't born with it as well. It is a skill that you can learn. So if you're not good at it yet, that is completely fine. No need for you to panic, because I will give you the whole system so that selling becomes something that you can repeat instead of something that you wing every single time that you do it. We're going to start by debunking the myth about your current sales ability and then working out who you should actually be selling to. Then how to keep your pipeline full so that the revenue stops swinging and fluctuating. From there, we look at the sales conversation itself, diagnosing what the prospect actually needs, listening more than you talk, and pricing on the value that you deliver instead of the amount of hours that you're going to be working. Then handling the objections, asking for the sale without forcing it, and following up on deals that usually just slip away. We're going to finish by turning it into a repeatable system, and then I'll give you the exact steps that you should be taking this week. By the end, you will have a sales process that you can actually run on repeat, one that gets people to say yes without any gimmicks, no pressure, or even pretending to be somebody that you're not. Revenue stops being something that just randomly happens to you. It will no longer be unpredictable and becomes something that you can build on purpose. Let's get into it. Why great founders are bad at sales. Most founders are just brilliant at what they do and just bad at selling. If that's you, it's completely normal and it's not a flaw in you that you should be worrying about. Selling is just a skill that you're yet to master. For example, you can be a great coach or consultant, but a fake guru on the internet with a fraction of your knowledge who knows how to sell will sign way more clients than you. Even a brilliant dentist in your neighborhood who is probably the best clinician in town can still have a failing practice if they struggle to get people through the door and can't maximize on their selling potential. I get it. You probably started your business just to do the work, the coaching, the consulting, the service that you deliver, the thing that you're genuinely brilliant at. The uncomfortable reality is that the business only grows as fast as you can sell, and most founders quietly dread it. It is common to avoid it and rely solely on your expertise to drive people in. I've watched so many founders just wing their sales calls or even undercharge because they're scared to lose potential clients or they get desperate. And this plays a bigger part in why their revenue becomes a roller coaster, swinging up one day, swinging down the next day. They may have a good month and then suddenly 2 quiet ones. Basically, one moment they're feasting and then the next moment it's all famine with no idea why. Here's what I want you to take from this. Business rarely die because the work or the product was bad. They die because not enough people bought from them. When you look at why companies fail, the top reasons are usually lack of market demand or running out of cash. And both of those underneath is a selling problem. You can be the best at your field and still go under because you never learned to sell. I learned sales the hard way, working many years at the corporate level inside million and billion pound companies in many sectors like tech, medicine, biotech, pharmaceuticals, life science. Basically, I was everywhere. I've personally closed over 45 million pounds in deals, and since then I've trained close to 220 salespeople, including whole teams in companies where the job was simple. Get them to hit their targets and beat their targets. And I've since gone on to help founders build profitable businesses. 35 of the people that I've worked with have gone on to do more than 61 million pounds in combined revenue between them. And now I currently have over 350 businesses running on my frameworks. I'm not telling you this to impress you or to brag. I'm telling you so you know what I'm about to share isn't just a random theory. It's what I actually did and what I've watched work for people who are not me. The good news is you don't need talent to be good at sales. Sales, like I said, is a skill that can be built, and that's the whole point of this video, because there's nothing wrong with being brilliant at what you do. You kind of have to be, but to grow your business, you really have to be good at selling it as well, or even good at creating a sales team capable of selling it. Sales is a system, not a personality. Let's start with the myth that makes most founders decide that sales isn't for them. The belief that to be good at sales, you have to be a natural smooth talker with loads of charm. Look at me, I don't have none of that. That belief is wrong, and research backs this. Adam Grant, an organization psychologist at Wharton, studied 340 salespeople and found that the relationship between how extroverted someone is and how much they sell is not a straight line. The natural talkers actually sold less than anyone else because they talked way too much and listened way too little. The best performers were actually ambiverts. I love that word. Basically, the ones in the middle. They were comfortable talking, but better at listening because they mostly knew when to listen. So the very thing that you think rules you out from being a great salesperson, the fact that you're not a non-stop talker, is probably more of an advantage than a weakness. I won't sit here and pretend personality counts for nothing. A few traits do give you a small edge, but they are not the ones that you would actually guess. Decades of research have gone into this and they've shown that conscientiousness, being organized, diligent, doing what you said you would, following up, and a drive to achieve do help quite a lot. But notice what this list is. It's all about discipline, and discipline is something that you choose. It's not something that you're born with. Whether you sell well has almost nothing to do with who you are and almost everything to do with whether you follow a process with discipline. Selling is a sequence of steps. If you run it in the same order every single time, every one of them can be practiced, they can be learned. This is why sales is a system. The people that are good at sales were not born that way. They were just running the same repeatable process, often without even realizing it. The difference is that you are going to learn it deliberately now, and that turns out to be a very real advantage for you. When you know the exact steps, you can repeat what works, fix what doesn't, and teach it to anyone you decide to bring into your business. Selling is helping and not pushing. Sales generally just has a bad rep. When you think of sales, you're thinking of the annoying telemarketers or a pushy car salesman. For most founders, selling doesn't just feel hard. It feels icky, like they're pushing someone into something or even taking advantage of them. That feeling is often psychological, a mental block, and it's what stops them from actually ever getting good at selling. So let me reframe what selling actually is. If you genuinely believe that your offer helps people, then not selling it is the real disservice. Someone in front of you has a problem that you can solve. If they walk away because you were too uncomfortable to make your case, they stay stuck with it and you've helped no one. Selling well just means making sure that the people you can genuinely help don't leave without that help. And this should already feel familiar to you because being good at selling requires the same skill that you already use every single day, which is diagnosis. If you've ever encountered any problem before in your life, then you would have had to diagnose it before finding the right solution, right? A good consultant or even a doctor doesn't just prescribe before understanding the problem. A good coach doesn't just hand over an action plan in the first 5 minutes. They ask, they dig, they understand, then they recommend a plan of action. A sales conversation is exactly the same. You understand the problem properly, then you help them decide whether what you do or sell is the right answer. So if the thought of selling makes you cringe, that's actually a good sign. It just means that you're not the pushy type and you don't need to become one. You just need to take the thing that you are already good at, asking and understanding, then point it at the sale. The approach I've just walked you through, helping first and diagnosing before you sell, has a name. It was coined by Mac Hanan back in 1970. I've used it in all my years in sales, and for high-ticket services like coaching and consulting, it is the exact approach that closes the most deals. A high-ticket sale is a considered decision that is built on trust. Nobody ever gets pressured into making a big, important purchase, and the moment that you push, you're confirming every fear that your prospect had about being sold to. They don't like it. The proof is in the biggest piece of sales research ever done. Neil Rackman's team analyzed around 35,000 sales calls, and the finding was the opposite of the stereotype about sales. In high-value sales, the classic closing tricks, the pressure, the hard ask, actually made sellers less likely to win. What won was diagnosing the problem properly before ever proposing a solution. And the bigger the deal, the more it held. So that's essentially the approach underneath everything else. You sell like a consultant, you diagnose, then you prescribe the solution. Sell to the right people. The sales system starts before you even say a word to anyone. It starts with who you choose to sell to. When money is tight in your business, your instinct is to sell to anyone that's going to pay you. It's a trap because the wrong client will end up costing you far more than they ever hand over. They argue the hardest, they're the most difficult to deliver for, and they drain your time, they drain your energy, they're also the quickest to ask for a refund. And when they are unhappy, oh boy, they tell everyone. You may take the money, but you will end up worse off. I made this mistake myself many times in one of my home businesses. I got good at the service and I grew an audience, but I picked a market of people who by definition couldn't pay what the work was actually worth. I had a good service, but I was serving the wrong people. It doesn't matter how good you are if you're selling to the people that cannot pay or won't pay. So you need to get comfortable with disqualifying people. The Sandler selling system that was built by David Sandler as a deliberate reaction against high pressure selling has a phrase for this: go for the no. The idea is that a fast no beats a slow maybe, because the slow maybes will waste the one thing that you can't get back, which is your time. In sales, yes is a yes, no is a no, maybe is a no. So you need to be qualifying hard. Do it early. The cleanest checklist for this came out of IBM and it's called BANT. You've probably heard about this. 4 things to check before you chase anyone. Budget. Can they actually afford what you charge? Authority. Are you talking to the person that can actually say yes, or will they have to run it past someone else? Need. Do they have the real problem that you can solve, or just a vague interest? And timeline. Are they looking to act soon or just browsing? Because someone with no urgency can sit in your pipeline, clogging it forever. If any of this doesn't apply to any of your prospects, it isn't a sale for you to be chasing. Just let it go. Keep your time for the right people. The clearest sign that you're selling to the wrong people is if you're always busy, but you're broke at the same time. You cannot and should not try to help everyone. Your pipeline is a numbers game. Once you know who you should be selling to, the next thing that matters is how many of them you can have in play at any one time. That's your pipeline. All the potential deals in motion right now, every prospect that you're talking to who could still become a client. And the state of your pipeline always determines your revenue projections. You see, most founders sell in a stop and start cycle. When work is slow, they panic, they hustle for clients, then they land loads of clients. They suddenly get busy delivering, and then they stop selling entirely. A few months later, the work that they're doing right now runs out. Then they're back to panic mode again. Feast and then famine on repeat. The thing to understand is that revenue is a lagging indicator. It always shows up months after the work that created it. A quiet month in your business today isn't just bad luck. It's mostly due to the prospecting that you didn't do a few weeks or even months prior. Jeb Blount, who wrote Fanatical Prospecting, one of my favorite books, puts it bluntly: the number one reason for failure in sales is an empty pipeline. And the number one reason for that empty pipeline is that you stop feeling it. It has a rule for this, the 30-day rule. The prospecting that you do in any 30-day window pays off over the next 90 days. So the cost of stopping doesn't just land today. It doesn't land in the now. It lands a quarter from now. And it's always when it's too late to fix it quickly. There is a second reason a full pipeline actually matters. Blount calls it the law of need. The more you need a particular deal, the less you're likely to get it. When you're desperate, when your pipeline is empty, you need this one prospect to say yes. You come across as very desperate to that customer. You discount, you chase, and people feel it, and then they just pull back. A full pipeline does more than just smooth your revenue. It gives you the calm and confidence to sell very well. It's almost like a sense of security because you are no longer reliant on just any single yes. It also makes it less likely for you to sell to the wrong people and compromise on your values. So I want you to treat selling as a habit, not an emergency solution to increase your revenue. You need to always work backwards from your income goal. If you want to bring in, say, £200,000 a year and your average client is worth £5,000, that is 40 clients you need to bring a year. Call it 3 to 4 a month. How many conversations that takes comes down to your close rate, and that swings a lot from around 15 up to 75%. That is a big gap, depending on how warm or well qualified your prospect actually are. At 15%, landing 40 clients means roughly about 270 conversations a year. That's about 5 a week. At 75%, it's only about 54 a year, so about 1 a week. Same goal, 5 times the work. And the difference is almost entirely how well you choose who to talk to in the first place. As a rule of thumb, your pipeline should always be full of well-qualified prospects. And whatever your close rate might be, pad your pipeline. Aim for about 3 times the number of clients you need. Not every conversation that's a sure banker will close, and some prospects just go quiet without warning. So carry more live prospect than the bare maths actually suggest, and keep your activity consistent every single week, especially when you're busy delivering. The shape of a sale. Before we get into the conversation itself, you need to shape the whole thing. A sale is rarely a single moment where someone just decides to buy. It plays out in a sequence of stages, and it's easy to lose deals by skipping one or even rushing through the stages. The stages of a deal. Every deal moves through the same handful of stages. First is a conversation where you work out whether it's even a fit. Then discovery, where you understand the problem properly. Then your recommendation and the price, which is where you show how you solve their problem and what that's worth. Then the objection, where they tell you what's really holding them back. Then the close, where you ask for the sale. And finally, the follow-up, where most of the deals that don't close on the spot are actually won or lost. A fair question I get is whether all of this happens in one call or several calls. My answer is always it depends on the deal. A smaller or a more straightforward sale can run through every stage in just one single conversation, from the first hello to closed in just one sitting. A bigger, more considered purchase usually stretches across several conversations over weeks. You have proposals and demonstrations. The number of calls it takes you to close a deal isn't the point here. The order at which you do it is the point. You still discover before you recommend, and you still handle the real objection before you ask for the sale. Follow-up is the one stage that lives outside all the calls. It happens in between or maybe after them, but not inside the call itself. Knowing the stages involved in a sale, being aware of them, does two things. It tells you where every deal is right now, so none of them go quiet and get forgotten. And it also tells you what your one job is at the moment. Instead of trying to do everything at once, you don't pitch in discovery. You don't close before you've handled all the real objection and shown your service or product. Each stage has a single job. Build a fluid script. Now that you've understood the stages, I want you to take those stages and build them into your own sales script. Not a rigid script that you read out word for word like a telemarketer, which is the fastest way to sound fake or even lose trust. Customers, clients, they don't like this. What you want is a fluid one. The same backbone every single time, the same key questions, the same way that you frame the price and ask for the sale, but delivered like a real conversation and adapted to the person in front of you. So that way you're not sounding like a robot. It's a structure you never have to improvise on, with the freedom to respond to what they actually say in a more natural tone. That's what every strong salesperson has. Whether they call it a script or not is another story. They know the framework code, so they are free to actually listen. Diagnose before you prescribe. The single most common mistake in any sales conversation is pitching way too early. A typical sales conversation often goes like this. You get on the call, the person immediately mentions the problem, and the second you hear something that you can solve, you launch in straight away, you interrupt them. Here's what I do. Here's how it works. Here's the package. You're excited and you want to help, so you prescribe way too early before you've even properly diagnosed their problems, and you lose the sale because they don't believe you truly understand them. You haven't let them speak enough. Sales is very emotionally charged, so you actually need to align with the emotions of your prospect. Think about your doctor here for a second. If they just wrote you a prescription before examining you, would you even trust a word of what they say to you? Selling works the same way. So at this stage, all you have to do is ask. You keep asking until you understand the problem better than they do, and you save the pitch for later. There's a proven structure for this from Neil Rackman's research called SPIN, S-P-I-N. After the 4 types of questions you should ask to understand your prospect properly. S is for situation questions to understand where they are right now. P is for problem questions to surface what's actually wrong. I is for implication questions, the ones most people tend to skip, to explore what the problem is costing them if it never gets fixed. And N is the need payoff questions to get them to say out loud what solving it will be worth to them. The order is what does the work. By the time you've asked your way through it in that order, they've literally talked themselves into needing a solution before you've actually pitched anything to them. So remember, situation questions, problem questions, implication questions, and then need payoff questions. The pain funnel. Sandler had a tool that fits perfectly here called the pain funnel, which is a sequence of questions that moves someone from the surface symptom down to the root problem and then to what it's really costing them. Questions like, tell me more about that. How long has it been going on? What have you tried? What happens if it doesn't change? If it's done well, it doesn't feel like an interrogation. It feels like someone is finally helping them see the full shape and the full picture of their own problem. And there's good data on how much to ask. Gong, which is a sales analytics company, studied over 500,000 sales calls and found a sweet spot of roughly 11 to 14 good questions on a discovery call. Fewer than that, and then you will just be guessing. Many more, and it does start to feel like an interrogation. You don't want that. So diagnose first, always. Talk less, listen more. The reason people pitch way too early in a sales process is the same reason they lose deals. They talk way too much. Most founders just think selling is about talking, persuading, explaining, overcoming objections. In reality, the person doing the listening is the one that is always in control because they are the one that are learning what actually matters. The numbers on this are striking, and they come from Gong again, which uses software to analyze what's actually said on recorded sales call. Top performers talk about 46% of the time and listen for the other 54%. The average sales rep talks about 68% of the time. Successful salespeople talk less than half the time. And across more than 67,000 product demos, not a single deal that closed had the seller talking in an unbroken stretch for more than 76 seconds. If you're talking for more than a minute, you're talking way too much. The moment you monologue past a minute, you start to lose people. People's attention spans are short nowadays, so it's important to keep them engaged. Let them talk more. You could always learn to pitch better. That's the easy part, but you also need to learn when to stop talking. Ask your question and just stay quiet. Let the silence sit even when it feels uncomfortable for you to be doing so, because that silence is where clients or prospect normally tells you the truth. Do that and two things will happen. You learn exactly what they need and they always feel heard, which is most of what people are actually buying. It makes them feel valued. Price on your value and not on your time. Your pricing is the thing that actually pays you, and the part that I personally got wrong for years. Most founders often just price based on their time, usually a day rate, an hourly rate, or even a number based on how long something takes. It feels fair, but it's a trap, and for two reasons. Firstly, it caps your income at the number of hours you can physically work. And secondly, it punishes you for being too good, because the better and faster that you get, the less that you earn for the same result. You are charging for time when the truth is the client doesn't care about your time. They care more about the outcome that they get from you. So always price on value instead. You need to charge for the result that you deliver, not the hours that you spend delivering that result. If you say save a client £100,000, the price isn't your 3 days of work. It's a fraction of that £100,000. As a rough rule, I would say charging something like 10 to 30% of the value that you create keeps the maths a no-brainer for the client and still pays you properly. So if you make someone £100,000, a £15,000 fee is easy to justify. Ron Baker, who wrote the definitive book on value pricing for professional firms, calls hourly billing outdated and self-defeating for exactly the same reason. It ties your income to effort instead of your worth. The value equation. Alex Zamosi has the cleanest way for you to think about what value actually is. He calls it the value equation. In someone's mind, value goes up with two things: the dream outcome that they want and how likely they believe you are to deliver it. And it goes down with two things: how long it takes and how much effort it costs them. So when you sell, you should spend your time making the outcome vivid, proving you can deliver it, and showing how fast and how easy it will be. Get those right and the price stops being the conversation or even a bone of contention. One more piece from behavior science that applies to pricing is actually anchoring. In a famous experiment by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, People were shown a random number and they asked to estimate something completely unrelated. The bigger that first number, the bigger their estimate turned out to be, even though everyone knew the number was meaningless. The first number in any negotiation always sets the frame for everything. So if you open low or even let the client name the figure first, you've anchored the whole conversation low. Name a confident value-based price and that number becomes the center of gravity for your negotiation. Give them a choice, not a yes or no. It is also important to make pricing easier on you and on them. Instead of presenting a single price which forces a straight yes or no decision, offer 3 options: good, better, and best. Rafi Mohammed laid this out in Harvard Business Review as good, better, best pricing, and it works for 2 reasons. First, it changes the question in the buyer's head from should I buy this or not to which one is right for me. When you give options, it's a good thing. And that is a far easier question to say yes to. Second, most people avoid the extremes. When faced with 3 tiers, they tend to rule out the cheapest as too basic and the most expensive as too much and settle for the middle because it feels safe. It feels like that is what they need. That's what they need to test. Further research shows that if you had a higher tier to your pricing or to your offer right now, the share of people choosing the middle one actually goes up. So set your tiers deliberately. Your top tier pricing should always anchor the whole thing high and makes everything below it look reasonable. And a few people will buy it because it genuinely is the complete solution. Your middle tier is the money maker. It's the one most people gravitate to. So build it as the obvious value choice, and your lowest tier mostly exists just to make the middle look a bit generous and to give clients a taste of the work that you can do. Each tier must be able to satisfy both your definition of value and the client's definition of the outcome that they want. Objections are often unanswered questions. So far, we've learned how to diagnose the core problem, make your case, name the price in a sales process. This is the point where prospective clients tend to push back, and it's where most founders just fall apart because they hear an objection, they panic, and they think the client is saying no to them. An objection is just a question that hasn't been answered yet, a buying signal even. Someone who had already decided against you won't bother objecting. They will just leave, they will just ghost you. When they say it's too expensive or I need to think about it, they're usually telling you one of 2 things. The value isn't clear enough yet, or even there's a worry they haven't said out loud yet. So your job here is not to argue back with them, it's to get curious. With time and experience, you get good at asking better questions that let you address objections whilst making your case. The best teacher on this is Chris Voss, a former lead FBI hostage negotiator who put his method in a book called Never Split the Difference. Very good book that, I must say. His tools work in sales precisely because none of them are pushy. There's a tactical empathy showing the person you understand their position before you actually respond. There's labeling where you name the likely concern out loud for them to hear, something like, it doesn't sound like the cost is the real worry here. Naming it makes the person feel understood and they will either confirm it or tell you what's actually bothering them. And there are calibrated questions, open questions that start with how or what. For example, how would you need this to work for you? What's making you hesitate? These questions may feel like you're handing the person control. In fact, you are steering them. You are getting the real objection on the table instead of the polite ones. I've got data to back me up here. Gong found that top performers respond to an objection by asking a question about 54% of the time against 31% of average reps. An objection is not a cue to get defensive. No, there's one practical move that always makes this easier. Isolate the objection before you handle it. If the issue seems to be price, ask, if we sorted out the price, is there anything else that would stop you moving forward? If they say no, you know that price is the only thing left for you to deal with now. But if they say yes, you've just found a real objection, the one that they weren't going to tell you about in the first place. So now you can move correct. Here are some common objections you'll probably encounter in sales, and each one is really telling you something specific. I want you to listen to this properly. If a customer says it's too expensive, this usually means the the value proposition isn't clear enough. They can't see why the outcome is worth the price. Assuming you've done your qualifying properly and you figured out that they can afford it, your job is now to show the ROI is no-brainer. It could also be a symptom of a pricing structure that is too rigid. You probably don't have options for them to choose from. When you hear the dreaded, I need to think about it, that almost always means the pain that they're feeling is not immediate enough, and it often just hides a worry that they haven't shared with you. So your job again is to gently draw that out. And when the prospect says it's not the right time, this just usually means they don't feel the true cost of doing nothing. Until they do, they won't move. So either make that cost real for them or keep them in your follow-up until it becomes urgent eventually, which is always the case. Finally, if someone ever tells you, I need to run it past someone, this means you're just not talking to the actual decision maker, which is something you want to know early on, not at the end. If your qualifying was done correctly, you shouldn't really be having this objection at all. Once you understand the real message behind an objection, you stop taking it personally, you stop just giving up randomly, and start answering the questions they are actually asking. You need to focus. The devil is in the detail. Ask for the sale. A common mistake a lot of founders tend to make is not asking for the sale. Imagine doing all the work that you've done. You've bothered to diagnose, present your case, you've shown the value, and then never actually asking for the sale. Make it make sense. You simply cannot wait for clients to suddenly volunteer their money. In the real world, clients almost never do. So you always have to ask for the sale, plainly. If you've done the earlier steps well, then the ask should feel natural next step rather than a confrontation. The easiest way to make it painless is to set it up at the very start with another idea from Sandler called the upfront contract. Right at the beginning of any conversation, maybe your first contact, you agree with what's going to happen at the end if the conversation goes well. Something like, by the end of this call, please, you will know if it's a fit. If it is, we'll talk about working together. And if it's not, just tell me. No hard feelings. That way, when it comes to the close isn't something you spring on them suddenly at the end. It's simply the thing you've already both agreed on right at the start. Then, when you do ask for the sale, you have to do one thing that's harder than it sounds. Just stop talking. Ask for the sale, name your price, just go quiet. Please, don't talk anymore. Most founders, out of nerves, they ask and then immediately yap. They keep talking and they talk the client straight back out of it. And then they start discounting before anyone's even pushed back. So ask and then let them answer. The silence is meant to be uncomfortable. Let it sit for a minute. Let it breathe. Speed and follow-up wins. Two things happen after a sales conversation that can actually decide the fate of more deals than the conversation itself. How fast you respond and whether you follow up at all. Let's talk about speed. The data here for speed of action is dramatic, and it comes from a study run with MIT and written up in Harvard Business Review. They found that contacting a lead within 5 minutes instead of 30 made you around 100 times more likely to reach them and 21 times more likely to qualify them. If you wait an hour, you're already 7 times less likely to connect than someone that called within that hour. And from the same research, around 23% of companies never responded to their leads at all. Imagine. So speed isn't a nice to have. When someone reaches out to you, the clock is your biggest competitor at that point in time. Let's look at follow-up. You've probably heard the phrase, the fortune is in the follow-up. And the principle holds even though the exact statistics people throw around are mostly made up. So I won't quote you that fake number, but in my own experience, it usually takes between 3 and 7 follow-ups before someone buys from you. And most people give up after 1 or 2. So be that founder that's always following up politely, persistently, and without making it weird. You don't want to be a pest because you're going to win far more deals if you're always on people's mind and you don't give up. We've learned a lot now, right? So let's pull everything together. Being good at sales, really good at sales, comes down to running the same system every single time. I said this at the start. Everything that we've covered is part of one repeatable process that you can now build and apply to your own specific businesses, regardless of what that is. This might feel like a lot to hold in your head right now, We've talked about qualifying the right people, diagnosing the real problem, talking less and listening more, pricing on value, handling objection, asking for the sale, then following up. And it will be a lot if you walked into every conversation trying to remember which move to pull out next. But good salespeople run the same sequence every single time. So almost none of it depends on your memory or your mood on the day. It becomes a habit. It's just a repeatable system. Sales always begins with the mindset that selling is helping the right people solve a real problem, not pushing anyone into anything. This allows you to build a fully qualified list of potential clients that make up your pipeline so that your revenue stops fluctuating and becomes even more predictable. Every prospect that goes through your sales conversation, which always takes the same shape: you diagnose before you prescribe, you talk less and listen more, you price on the value that you deliver, you treat objection as a question to answer, and then you actually ask for the sale. After that, you just follow up, because that is where most deals are always won. Nothing with sales is to do with luck or charm. Although a bit of luck doesn't hurt here and there, every piece of the sales journey is a learnable step, and when run all together in a sequence, they are the process. To make the process reliable, you need to run it like a system. You need to track each deal through its stages, from your first conversation to qualifying to proposal to close to delivery, and track the activity that drives it: the calls, the messages that you send, the follow-ups that you make, the meetings that you book, and the deals that you end up closing. The first of those are leading indicators, the things that you control day to day. Deals closed is the lagging one that shows up weeks later. Measure your conversion rate from one stage to the next and give the whole thing a weekly rhythm. Block time in your calendar to fill the pipeline and to review the few numbers that tell you your revenue projection. Those numbers should serve as your early warning system. If you monitor them every single week, they will let you see a quiet month coming a mile away, while there's still time to act, instead of being blindsided, especially when it's too late. In his book, Predictable Revenue, Aaron Ross showed exactly this. He built an outbound sales system at Salesforce.com that's credited with adding over $100 million in new recurring revenue. His core argument is the part that matters most for you. Predictable revenue doesn't come from one gifted person hustling. It comes from turning sales into a repeatable machine, and as you grow and scale, splitting that machine into specialized roles. So finding leads, qualifying them, closing are not all sitting on the same overstretched pair of shoulders. You can't carry it all. Right now, whilst your business is still at the start or still small, those shoulders are yours. And the whole point of building a system is that over time, it doesn't have to be. You can build a team using that system. Your sales process and system is unique to you and your business. Never try to copy someone else's. I see this a lot. People download a PDF, they go to a website and try to copy what someone else is doing. It never works. Spend the time to build one that works for you and is tailored fully to your business and exactly how you work. If you can get this right, your revenue projection becomes predictable with high level of accuracy, meaning you can always know what to do in your business. You're not just doing anything random to bring money in. You're proactive, you're calculated. You decide how much work comes in rather than waiting to find out in a few months' time. That is what it actually means to be good at sales, having a system that you choose to build. So what to do next? You don't have to fix all your sales problem all at once. You just have to start somewhere, and here's where you need to start this week. The first thing you need to do is work out your numbers. Look at how your last 10 or 20 sales conversations have gone and count roughly how many became paying clients. That's your conversion rate. It tells you how many conversations you need to hit before your income goal. Now you have a target to aim for instead of just guessing. Second thing you need to do is fix your discovery. On your very next call, do one thing differently. Ask more questions than you pitch. Use the spin order: situation, problem, implication, and need payoff questions to understand the problem and what is costing them before you say a single word about your solution. And number 3, reprice one offer on value. Take one thing that you sell and instead of pricing it by the hours that it takes you to do it, price it by the outcome it delivers for the client. Remember the formula that we used previously. The fourth thing that you need to do is follow up on all the deals that you've previously written up. Pick 3 conversations you assumed were dead, and then follow up. Keep it simple, no apology needed, just a quick follow-up message. And finally, number 5, give your pipeline a rhythm. Block about 30 to 60 minutes this week in the diary to do nothing but fill your pipeline and look at your numbers, and then do the same next week and the week after. That one recurring habit is what is going to turn all of this work into a system for you. Download my app Asheyi to help you track your sales system. Asheyi is an AI business coach that tracks the key system every business runs on and shows you where you're most stuck and what to fix first. It's currently free on iOS with a trial, so you can see your scores before you commit to a full subscription. Being good at sales is about understanding people, diagnosing the real problem, having the discipline to run a system instead of winging it or even improvising. You are already doing the hard part right now. You're good at what you do. You decided to start a business. Sales is just a skill that lets the right people find that out and pay you properly for it. Selling is a skill that you build. So go ahead and build it. Thank you so much for sticking to the end. If this was useful, subscribe. I've got more of this coming and you won't want to miss them. Give it a like so it reaches another founder who wants to level up their business, and tell me in the comments, which of these action steps are you going to be starting this week? I read them all, so let me know. And for now, see you next time.